My dear children, I will discuss about trait approaches. Now, first of all, you have to know what is trait. And psychologists, when analyze the personality of an individual, they mainly concern with identifying the behavioral attributes, which are the basic components or the building blocks of personality. Yes. And trait approach, psychologists believe that though human beings display a wide range of variations in their personalities. So what is trait? Trait is considered as a relatively enduring attribute or quality on which one individual differs from another. We know already on the basis of personality we can differ, and on the basis of trait also. We know various kinds of traits. And trait approach attempts to identify primary characteristics of people, is a building block of our personality. Relatively stable over time, generally consistent across situation. Strengths and combination vary across individuals, leading to individual differences in personality also. Now, different theories of trait approaches, and Allport trait theory, Cattell personality factors, and Ising's theory mainly. Now first, Allport's view. And Allport is considered as the champion of trait approach to personality. Yes. And traits are more generalized than habits, and also dynamic and determined behavior. Various kinds of traits according to Allport: cardinal traits, central traits, and secondary traits. What is cardinal traits? Cardinal traits highly generalized disposition. Yes, and have widespread impacts on behavior. For example, if a person's whole life seems to be organized around honesty, it becomes a cardinal trait of his personality. He maintains his honesty even in adverse situation also, various kinds of situation also. And you know already Mahatma Gandhi's non-violence and Hitler's characteristics also are examples of cardinal traits. Mother Teresa's characteristics also. And now central traits. Central traits are relatively less pervasive. Yes. And for example, sociability, submissiveness, dominance, etc. And now secondary traits. Secondary traits appear in specific situations. Yes, are specific traits. And of course, narrow in effect. Yes. And this kind of traits, play a very minor role. Yes. And suppose, like mangoes, prefers ethnic clothes, etc. Yes. And now, Cattell. Cattell, believe that there is a common structure found in all personalities. Yes. And Cattell used factor analysis, a statistical technique. Yes. And Cattell, said source traits, surface traits, and there are other kinds of traits also, but your NCERT book has mentioned only source traits and surface traits. Source traits are stable, like cardinal traits of Allport's, are considered as the building blocks of personality. And surface trait, less stable. Yes, rather than source trait. And Cattell described the source traits in terms of opposing tendencies. Yes, and he developed a test called, 16 personality factor questionnaire, 16 PF, and identified various kinds of, traits. Yes, like emotionally stable, dominance, positive character. Yes, various kinds of traits. And now, next, Ising's, the dimension of personality. Yes, is very much important. And now, Ising's proposed that personality could be reduced into two broad dimensions. First, two broad dimensions. Yes, and these are biologically and genetically based. That means these dimensions: introversion, extroversion. Yes. And now, neuroticism and emotional stability, then extroversion versus introversion, and next, last, psychoticism versus sociability. And opposite pole of neuroticism, emotional stability. Yes. And now, it refers to the degree to which people have control over their feelings. Yes. At one extreme of the dimension, we find people who are neurotic, anxious, moody, restless, quickly and just change their mood. Yes. And at the other extreme lie people who are calm, yes, reliable, remain under control. Yes. So, the opposite pole of neuroticism is emotional stability. And these are the characteristics of the traits of neuroticism: anxious, moody, touchy, restless. Yes. And the lies people, and their characteristics, calm, reliable. And now next, extroversion versus introversion. And extroversion, people are socially outgoing, talkative, sociable, venturesome. Yes. And active. And opposite end, introversions, passive, reserved, shy, less talkative. And introversion and extroversions. Yes, it's really depend on cortical arousal level. Yes. And now next, psychoticism versus sociability or superego function. A person who scores high on psychoticism dimensions tends to be hostile, egocentric, antisocial. Yes, aggressive, unempathetic, cruel. Yes. And now, Ising's proposed Ising's personality questionnaire. Yes, is the test which is used for studying these dimensions of personality. And now the trait approach is very popular, and many advances in this respect are taking place. Yes. And the trait approach, and you have to read Allport's trait theory, Cattell personality factor, and Cattell proposed 16 PF, 16 personality factor and used factor analysis, and Ising's theory also. Yes. Thank you, my dear children.